What's going on, guys? Zuko back with another Dragonflight video. Hope you're all doing super well. We are continuing with the 10.2 content coverage. My hair is an absolute disaster. What's going on? We're going to do Enhancement Shaman next. I've done Survival Hunter. We'll talk about Enhancement Shaman now. And I'm going to talk about the tier set bonus. We're going to talk about any class changes that have come through. We'll look at that right now. That's the first thing we're going to look at. And then we'll talk about potentially any talents that might be changing for Enhancement Shaman, of which there probably isn't going to be too many, but we'll talk about builds and stuff like that. First of all, what massive changes are coming in 10.2 to Enhancement Shaman? Well, there's one line of text here, and it's very small, but it's very important, and it is that Primordial Wave will now deal 500% increased damage. So this is a pretty big deal. Your Mana Spring will restore less mana as well. Nobody cares. Primordial Wave now does 500% more damage, and if we just look at it really quickly, mine right now is going to do about almost 47,000 shadow damage whenever you cast it, which is pretty good in the context of what the new tier set bonus is. So let's take a look at what that new tier set bonus is going to be. It's basically all centered around Primordial Wave. Primordial Wave summons a Lightning Feral Spirit that increases your nature damage done by 20% for 15 seconds. Okay, pretty good. Not entirely dissimilar to like the current tier set bonus, where Sundering gives you a damage amp. Now Primordial Wave gives you a nature damage amp. Summoning a Feral Spirit reduces the cooldown of Primordial Wave by 7 seconds. This is pretty significant. So now, instead of Primordial Wave just being a button that we press every 45 seconds, we are realistically going to be reducing the cooldown of this almost in half by the time it comes back. It kind of depends on our build and how many wolves we end up summoning in the in the cooldown window of Primordial Wave. So unfortunately right now, with the testing that I've done, this doesn't work properly. So two things don't work properly. Number one, this Feral Spirit that you summon, this Lightning Feral Spirit, does not generate Maelstrom weapon stacks for you like regular Feral Spirits do. And summoning Feral Spirits does not reduce the cooldown of Primordial Wave. So if you just see here, if I throw Primordial Wave out here, it summons that wolf. And then look at the cooldown of Primordial. 40 seconds. If I summon my wolves here, the cooldown doesn't move at all. So what I'm assuming is going to be the case when this is working properly, I'm assuming what's going to happen is each wolf will reduce the cooldown of Primordial Wave by 7 seconds. That's how I'm reading it. Summoning a Feral Spirit. So if you summon 2, you're going to get 14 seconds off the cooldown of Primordial Wave. And I'm assuming that when you press Primordial Wave, the actual wolf that you summon right there, the Lightning Wolf, will also potentially give you 7 seconds. So if that's the case, you're going to end up getting 21 seconds of cooldown reduction on Primordial Wave, which is basically half of its cooldown. So you press Primordial Wave and then you summon your wolves, and Primordial Wave is already at the 20-second mark back for you, almost ready to go. That would be pretty cool if that's how this worked. Unfortunately, neither of those things are working right now on the PTR. It is just the first week of testing, so it makes sense. But let's talk about builds potentially for this new tier set bonus, because a lot of people I've seen talking about, they're scared that the Storm build is gone now. Here's kind of my current thinking on what you can do for a Storm build. So a typical Storm build does not have Lava Lash or Molten Assault. You're going to have to add this in because, again, we want to do the Primordial Wave with Lava Lash. We want to spread the Flame Shocks to as many targets as we can, so that we can get a Giga Chad Lightning Bolt that hits all those enemies and then gives us a big haste buff. This is one way that you can build the new Storm build. You still have your Ascendants, you've got Static Accumulation and Thorums, you have 1 point into Witch Doctors, and then you have all the points down here. The other way you can build it is to not take the haste buff at all and put 2 points in Witch Doctors, 1 into Legacy, and then go 1 into Alpha Wolf. So you won't get the big haste buff, but you will still get the Legacy of the Frost Witch buff. And I'll show you this version of it really quickly right here. You're still going to get big lightning bolts that are going to cleave everything, which is super cool. But you're not going to get the haste bonus to go along with it. So here's what I would do here. Again, we put our totem down, start with a Flame Shock over there, summon my wolves, and then we'll go Primordial Wave, spread it around, then do a Lightning Bolt, and then I'm into my rotation. And again, we're just doing Chain Lightning is going to reset Storm Strike. My wolves are back. Boom. summon them again. That would be cooling down Primordial Wave. You're using Lava Lash as a filler, and that just keeps your Flame Shocks going, and then you're just cycling between your Storm Strikes and your Chain Lightnings and your Crash Lightnings. Summon your Wolves whenever you can. Your Wolves are going to be doing AoE damage with Alpha Wolf, which is really nice. Again, another Lava Lash to spread Flame Shocks there. And then when you get that Primordial Wave back again, you're going to be pressing it and making sure that you have all your Flame Shocks up to get the biggest Lightning Bolt that you possibly can. Again, you don't get a haste buff, but it's not the end of the world. Here's my damage coming right here. Boom, there's all my damage, big Lightning Bolt damage. And that's how the build would kind of play. Now, you would be getting a much higher uptime on Primordial Wave because you'd be getting it cooled down by all the wolves that you're summoning. And again, like I said before, I think realistically you're looking at a 20-second, maybe like a 12-second cooldown on Primordial Wave if you're doing it perfectly. Because you can summon a lot of wolves in this window. And that's kind of how that's going to look. Now, the reason that this works pretty well is because a huge chunk of the storm build, the damage that comes out of the storm build, is nature damage. Remember, this new tier set bonus gives us 20% more nature damage after Primordial Wave gets cast. And whenever we cast Primordial Wave, we're doing that big Lightning Bolt spread. Look how much damage Lightning Bolt did. So look at our damage that we ended up doing here. We've got Chain Lightnings 18.7 plus 14.2. That's 20. That's like 34, 33% of our damage. Then 43% with Crash Lightning. And then let's call it 50% of our damage with the other part of Crash Lightning. 50% of our damage is nature damage. So we are going to be benefiting from this 20% increased nature damage with the Lightning Feral Spirit that comes out. So I do think even if you want to do a Storm build, this is one way you can build it. The other way you can build it is to scrap this stuff and don't take Legacy anymore and go all in on the Primordial Wave window. And then you're going to have a huge haste window here. Now you're going to have less cooldown reduction on your Feral Spirits, which means you're probably going to be summoning them less potentially. And then you're going to be getting less cooldown reduction on Primordial Wave. Potentially. I don't know for a fact that that's what's going to happen. But here's how this would start. You go over here. You go Primordial Wave. Then you do your Wolves. Then we spread it around. And then we go Lightning Bolts. And we do our combo. And then we get a big haste window this time. But no Legacy of the Frost Switch reset. So we have to be a little bit more careful. There, we got a proc on Ascendance finally. This is going to be a lot more damage this time because we got a proc this time and didn't get a proc last time. But this is kind of how this one's going to play. Refresh my dot over there. And then, again, we would be cooling down Primordial Wave. It's unfortunately not working right now, as I said before. But we'll just do one more Primordial Wave window to show you the damage. And we are cooling down our Wolves a little bit, but it's nowhere near as good as the amount of cooldown reduction we were getting before. You can see there's a bit of a lull there. Now, if you happen to get an Ascendance proc inside your Primordial Wave window, it's like super good, right? Because all those extra Chain Lightnings you're getting for free. Here's our big haste window again. You're getting all those Chain Lightnings for free, right? And those Chain Lightnings are going to be 20% stronger. There, we got a proc. We're inside our Primordial Wave window right now. So we're getting that extra damage onto those free Chain Lightnings that we're casting. So that's kind of the idea there with the Storm build. You can see Chain Lightning much, much stronger this time around because we had it inside of a Primordial Wave window and because we got an Ascendance proc twice that we didn't get on the last one. But again, our nature damage dealt 24, 38, 50% of our damage right there. And then another 56% of our damage. The Ascendance proc itself is nature damage. So 60% of our damage this time around was nature damage. And again, we're benefiting from the nature damage from the Primordial Wave Lightning Feral Spirit that's coming out there for 15 seconds. So it's still going to be good for the Storm build. I think you can also run the Elementalist build. There's nothing wrong with the Elementalist build. Go all down here. Get the Hailstorm. Get Swirling Maelstrom. Get all this fire stuff. It's totally fine. But with the Elementalist build, you're looking at more like 35 to 40% of your damage being nature damage. The rest of it is going to be fire and frost. Whereas with the Storm build, 50 to 60% of your damage is nature damage, depending on how you build it. And so I think you're going to benefit a little bit more from the two-piece in that regard. But we're really going to have to wait and see. I kind of wanted to cover this. I waited a couple days before I covered Enhancement Shaman. I was really hoping they would just do a patch and like make all these things work on the tier set bonus. They're not working right now, but unfortunately they haven't. So this is how you can build your Storm build. You can do it this way, or you can do it this way. Or if you don't care for Alpha Wolf, you're more if it's a Tyrannical week, or if you're on if you're doing a raid fight, you could do it this way as well. There's lots of different ways you could kind of do this, but I think ultimately the Storm build will absolutely have a place in 10.2 for Enhancement Shaman. You're just kind of adding in this little layer of Lava Lash, Molten Assault, and you're not pressing Ice Strike anymore. You're just changing a couple little, you're tweaking it a little bit. It's not just a pure Storm build, it's a little bit more of a Flame Strike build, but you're still getting that core interaction of Ascendance proccing, getting those free Chain Lightnings going off in AoE, of course, and those free Chain Lightnings are going to now get that 20% bonus to your nature damage if they're inside that Primordial Wave window. I think your Primordial Wave, instead of it being a 40-second cooldown, it's realistically going to be like a 15-second cooldown. Sorry, 45. I think it's going to go from 45 to 15. If you're properly managing your wolves, and if each wolf counts for 7 seconds of cooldown reduction, it's definitely going to be like in the 15-second ballpark, which is amazing. Really good for Mythic Plus. I mean, you're going to have crazy uptime on this thing, and I think it's going to be really fun to play around with. So let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. I think my first look at Enhancement Shaman is that this set looks good. I think it's good for Elementalist or the Storm build. You got to tweak the Storm build a little bit. I think it's a good set once it really starts to actually work, and when you start to see the cooldown reduction coming in. I think it's gonna be very, very strong. So let me know what you think in those comments down below. Would love to hear from you guys. Thank you so much again for watching. Love you all. I will see you in the next one.